Okay, it's 5:30, and I think that we're going to go ahead and get started. We have all our candidates up here, so welcome to our candidates, and thanks to all of you for coming out this evening to listen to what they have to say. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Reading area and VivaDowntown, John's my buddy tonight, we're working in tandem. I would like to welcome you to the Candidates Forum for the Reading City Council. My name is Susan Morris Wilson, and everybody knows John Truitt's name, so I don't hardly have to introduce him. We'll be your moderators this evening. We will get started. Just to remind you, our candidates, Kristen Schrader, James Crockett, Michael DeQuisto, Aaron Resner, and then we have Francie Sullivan. Kristen, you're going to start. And that means, James, that you'll answer the first question first.
Good evening. As we just were introduced, I'm Kristen Schrader, and I'm serving my 4th year on the City Council. And I see that Reading has a lot of potential. Whoops. Okay. A lot of potential for expanded economic vitality, and we need to improve our public safety for our families, our neighbors, and our businesses. I think we've made great strides in that in the last 4 years that I've been on the council. We've looked like we have a lot of development downtown that we just 2 years ago didn't have. We have more, I think, increased public safety, although we have a long way to go. We need more jail space. But I think if you look back 4 years and see where we were, and even just look back to the beginning of 2018, I feel like people felt there are a lot of positive things happening in Reading, and again, we still have a lot of things we need to improve on. My background is that I'm a small business owner for the last 32 years. I'm born and raised in Reading. I've been elected to 2 school boards for a total of 17 years, so I've balanced public fund budgets for the last 21 years, and I'm proud to say that I'm fiscally responsible and that I value that we need to match our needs to our funding, and that right now we, as the City of Reading, in the last 4 years, we have closed our budget shortfall from $25 million to $9 million just in the last year and a half. So I think we're on the right road to making our budget sound and being able to provide the needs for our communities.
If you could hand that to James. So you get to everybody's going to make their opening statement. So it's time for your opening statement, James.
Thank you. I wanted to thank VivaDowntown and the League of Women Voters, Cascade Theatre, and the Record Searchlight for putting us on tonight. Appreciate that. I also want to recognize the 4 people up here. They are great people, and I know that they have it in their heart to make our city better. Kristen, I've talked with her for a while. It's really clear she does her homework. She knows what she's talking about, and she really has a drive and a passion. And she actually focuses a lot on youth, and I work with at-risk teens, so I very much appreciate her personal endeavors in that matter. And then Michael, I haven't had a bunch of interaction with him, but a stand-up guy came up and shook my hand, made me feel very welcome. Realizing I'm a kind of a dark horse candidate here that not many people have heard of, it's just been great to, and Aaron as well, came up and said hi, and we were talking, and very clear, very similar kind of aspirations between me and her. We're young, we have a family. Really looking to fight and make this better. And then Francie, she's an inspiration for me. She got me thinking about politics. She came to my class, she talked to my students, she got me a flag for the city, and she's just been very encouraging. So I just want to recognize the people that are up here and the people that have put this on. It's great. Now in terms of me, in 2009 my aspirations were to move to Australia and become a surfer, you know, minimum wage job. And then I came out to Reading and saw a friend graduate, and I was sitting in a lake enjoying the beauty, and I said, why don't I move here instead? And when I moved here, you guys don't know this, but you're about to find out, I met the most amazing person on the face of the planet. First day I was here. And so I'm no fool. I married that person, and now we have 3 kids. And she has a 5, 3, and 2-year-old at home while I'm out working and doing crazy stuff like this. Thankfully, we got a babysitter for the night, but I don't know if you guys could humor me. Can you stand up? This is Ashley Crockett. She's my wife. Can we give her a round of applause? She's amazing. say, is it every smart man has a smarter woman, or every great man has a great wife? I don't know. I just knew it was time to up my game. So I'm in it for my family. I'm in it because I study government, I study economics around the world. I try to be very informed on these issues and pay attention to what's going around the world and what works, what doesn't work. And there's some specific things I think that Reading could improve on. I think there's some specific things that we're doing well. But I am excited to move us forward with energy and passion for the future. And it's mainly because I have a vision for Reading where my kids and my family stay here and are rooted here. So it is skin in the game for me, and I'm passionate about improving the future for everyone.
So I do want to thank everybody here for putting this on. This is a very informative event. There's a lot of people here. I want to thank mostly all of you for coming out and taking your time to come and listen to us. Hopefully we can have a conversation with each other as opposed to us just talking to you, which sometimes happens, and it's probably not the best way to be. My name is Michael DeQuisto. I grew up in an Army family. My father was a doctor. We lived in Maryland. We lived in Puerto Rico. We lived in Indianapolis, where I went to high school. After high school, I applied to go to college, and I was fortunate enough to get into Stanford. I'm still not sure how that happened. I graduated in 1975 with a degree in economics, and then I went to law school because I didn't know how to do anything else besides go to school. Graduated from there in 78. Opened my own business down there as a lawyer, but in addition to being a lawyer, you have to know how to run a business, which I did and I learned. I met the best person in my life, my wife Tina. We got married. It took her 3 years to go out with me, but anyway. We've been married 32 years, got married in 1986, had 2 children in 89 and 91, and then decided that we didn't want to raise our children in Southern California. So I spent 2 years, and with the family, we drove around California to find a place to live, and we chose Reading, of all the places to go. And we chose it for a number of reasons. It's a beautiful place, as we all know. It has a lot of amenities, has outdoor activities. But the biggest reason that we chose it, and the most important reason, was the people who live here. And the people that we found and we met who didn't know us from Adam were welcoming, they were heartfelt, they were outgoing, they were happy, and we decided it was a place that we wanted to grow our family and raise our family. So I bought a business here, a law practice, and have taken that over and done very well for myself. We're still married. We still have 2 kids. Our daughter got married, but I think they say she's always your daughter, although somebody else is responsible for her now. But anyway, they went away to college, but they didn't come back here. And that's one of the issues that we see in this town, is there are not sufficient jobs. There's no reason for people to stay here, and you need to have a stable population base to go and do that. So why am I running for city council? Everybody, I think, should participate in some fashion in the community. You can work for a nonprofit, you can volunteer, you can be a baseball, sports coach, you could do anything you want. I think that I can help most with being on city council. I've had lots of experience in the community with civic boards, and I helped start the Sundial Film Festival. I have been a founding member of a group called SAGE, which is the Shasta Angel Group, and that invests like Shark Tank and does startups. But I look forward to tonight. I thank you for your attention, and I hope we have an interesting evening.
Thank you. Erin Resner.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for having us. I'd like to take a minute to discuss with you and to give a little bit of my background. I moved to Reading when I was about 6 months old. I moved here from Yuba City. That's where my family is from. My grandma was a Yuba County clerk for about 40 years or so. So civic engagement, knocking on doors was sort of bred in me from a young age. Like I said, we moved up here. I went to grade school. I went to Foothill High School, and then I left, and I went away to college, moved back here, married my husband. In the last 14 years, we have been business owners here in Reading. We own Dutch Bros Coffee. We have 3 small children. They are 9, 4, and 1, 2 boys and a little girl. They keep us extremely busy, as do our volunteer and nonprofit and nonprofit work. Like I said, I went away for college, and when I moved from here to Santa Barbara, as much as I loved living on the beach and hearing the waves from my dorm room, I always knew that I was going to be one of those people who did come back here because I was really proud of where it is that I came from. And so that's part of the reason why I decided to run, is because I want my children to be really proud of where it is that they come from. But I think that when you decide to run, that there's a point in time in which that you put your stake in the ground and you say, okay, I can only sit on the sidelines for so long. And for me, that was during a Sunday night dinner with my family, because most of them still live here, in which that we were discussing things in the state of the city and all of that. And my dad said that he no longer allows my mom to go to the grocery store by herself. And as I decided that I was going to be my independent woman and say, how dare you, he paused and said, the reason is that in the last week that 2 strange men have tried to crawl in her car while she is loading groceries, and that I just don't feel like that that's acceptable to put her in harm's way. And so that was sort of the gut punch for me, in which I want my children to be proud of where it is that they came from, but I also want our people to love it here and to feel safe and for us to have a thriving community. So I really appreciate you for coming and taking time out of your schedules, and I look forward to our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And Francie?
I'm Francie Sullivan, and thank you so much to the League of Women Voters, the Record Searchlight, and VivaDowntown for giving us this opportunity. 4 years ago, in this very room, I said one of my fantasies was, if I won the lottery, I'd tear down our crumbling parking garage, and I'd build affordable housing, and I'd build shopping on the ground floor, and somehow we'd tuck some parking in there so everybody could still drive downtown. I didn't even know about food trucks. I mean, that wasn't even part of my fantasy. But in the past 4 years, and unbeknownst to anyone 4 years ago, we got a grant to do a specific plan for downtown. We got a grant to do a transportation plan that's going to make it easier for people to walk and ride bikes along with driving. And because we did the transportation plan, and because we're making downtown more accessible by bikes from the river trail, we've gotten $44 million in competitive grants, which have made affordable housing and apartment complexes and things like that, multiple family housing, a possibility. When I talked to developers before, they said, you know, really, Reading doesn't have the market. It's not a place where investors can invest in that kind of housing and get a return in this lifetime. Who is lucky enough? What city is lucky enough to have a McConnell Foundation that loves them and is willing to invest in their downtown? So because of the McConnell Foundation and those grants, this is going to happen in my lifetime. I am so thrilled. I'm running because I want to be here for the rebuilding. I want to help. I think my experience, my 8 years on the Board of Supervisors, my 8 years on the City Council, I understand how government works a little better. I have the option of knowing that the sheriff is in charge of jail cells. We're in charge of a police department, of knowing who can do what. And I want to use that in the rebuilding process. So I hope you will all consider me on November 6th, and the most important thing is to vote. Your vote counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Francie. And now we're going to move on to the questions. John?
Thank you, candidates. Hey, before we get started with the questions, I just want to remind everybody that you're going to hear some opinions that you agree with. You're going to hear some opinions that you don't agree with. I ask everybody to please hold their applause or any sort of verbiage or anything until the end of the show. Can you all agree to do that with me? Thank you very much. First question goes to James Crockett first. James, what are your top 3 priorities for the city of Reading?
I think the first thing, so I work with at-risk kids, And the first thing we've got to do is we've got to have teeth. When you are enforcing rules in a classroom, if they do something that they shouldn't and there's no consequences, that's a serious issue. So my top priority would be working with the county and getting more jail space. There's a lot of other great ways to spend money, but I think that's the first thing. We need a place to put people that are offending, and a lot of the offenders are the repeat offenders. The second thing I think we need to work on is getting a lot more economic activity in the city, really helping us to bolster that, looking for creative outlets to show people what we have. And the third thing, I think the way we think about how we run the city, the way we think about business, the way we think about interacting with each other, I think the mindset we have just to take more risks and do more for our city, I think is the number 3 thing I would say.
Thank you. Michael DeKisto, what are your top 3 priorities for the city of Reading?
So there's a lot of priorities, and the city has a lot of things it has to work on. The top 3 for me are crime, crime, and crime. Well, no, don't clap. That was a rule. But the way that I look at it is, if we don't solve the crime problem, everything else is going to wither away and get worse. And that's what I think that we need to emphasize on. The other problems, you have to prioritize, and there's not enough money to fix all the problems, so I think you need to deal with the crime problem first. Just as a for instance, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, according to Chief Moore, there were 100,000 calls for service last year, 10,000 arrests, 308 people comprised 3,200 of those arrests. So if you put those 308 people off the streets, whether it's jail beds or some other beds, and there's 100 being built, you're now left with 200 jail beds, which is an objective, quantifiable goal, and I'll be happy to discuss later on how we can get there.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, what are your top 3 priorities for the city of Reading?
I would say that I am passionate about all of our quality of life issues. So whether that is public safety, or whether that is safe parks and trails or economic development, I think that all of those are intertwined. In regards to public safety, do those who are serving us and protecting us have the resources in which that they need? Do our children feel safe when they are playing outside? Do our homes feel safe? I think that safe parks and trails are an integral part to bringing in some of those, what we like to call a trailing spouse, in regards to business development and economic development. I think that all of these are intertwined. I think that one plays off of the other, and if we continue to focus on each of those, that we can collaborate and we can come to some really great solutions.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, what are your top 3 priorities for the city of Reading?
My highest priority is to get everyone in the city of Reading to look at the City of Reading website, tap on the transparency portal, and you can find out exactly how many police officers we have, how many firefighters we have, what calls they went on. Because I think ultimately it's pretty clear we have no problems in our city that aren't solvable, but they take money. And so our community needs to decide whether more police, more firefighters, paying for parks, fixing the soccer field is worth it or not. One of my other highest priorities is to continue encouraging the creativity, the fresh ideas of our staff. Our police chief now has weekly sweeps. We have police officers on bicycles, electric bikes, motorcycles. They're trying every trick they can with the limited number of officers that we have, and that includes almost 10 officers that are injured right now from patrol.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, what are your top 3 priorities for the city of Reading?
Well, it's my top priority, but it's also the community's top priority. When we did a poll, and there's been a number of surveys in our community, the community said the top priority is public safety, and they identified not just more jail space and more enforcement, but they also said they wanted more mental health services. Substance use, I think, was also one of the other topics, and they're all things that we need to collaborate in the community to work towards. Since we don't control the jail, but we control who's arrested. We also need to collaborate on and understand what the rules are for releasing people and what the post-release treatment is. I also think housing is important. Affordable housing and economic development is also something the city should work on to provide incentives and increase the opportunities, because they all kind of go together. If people have meaningful jobs and they are living in affordable housing, might be less likely to offend.
Thank you.
So it's my turn, and I'm going to give a brief civics lesson. The City Council must comply with what's called the Brown Act. And the Brown Act is a public engagement system that allows every citizen to know exactly how decisions are being made. One of the issues in the Brown Act is public comment, and that allows citizens to make comments at 2 times. One in the period that says public comment on the agenda for the organization that's you're watching, in this case the City Council, the Reading City Council, and the other at each agenda item. One of the positions that the League of Women Voters has taken, and since I'm with the League of Women Voters, I have taken this position, is that public comment should be made available for citizens at the beginning of meetings. The Reading City Council in the past has moved that public comment to the end of the meeting. Many people can't last till the end of the meeting. There's no public transportation at the end of the meeting. And we feel that if you really want to hear what the public is interested in, you need to listen at the beginning. So I'm going to ask each of these. All you have to do is give me a yes or a no. Michael DeQuisto, you will go first. If you would like to explain your yes or no, should public comment be held at the beginning of the meeting in addition to at the agenda items?
This was a big brouhaha several years ago. I think public comment should be at the beginning. I think it should be on each item. And if there are people that can't come at the beginning, it should be at the end. I think that public comment should be as wide, as open, as transparent as possible, because you're there to represent the interests of all the citizens and the community. So if you have to stay later, you have to stay later. I think now it's at the beginning in Reading, and I think they limit it to 30 minutes. Now, while you don't usually have 30 minutes worth of comment, I wouldn't limit it. I would make it at the beginning and make it unlimited. They limit each speaker to 3 minutes, which appears to be reasonable, but I would make it more open, more transparent, and I would be in favor of as much public comment as you could do.
Thank you. Erin? Same question.
So I'm not going to repeat what Mike said, but I'm going to say that this is actually a topic that Mike and I really, not that there are lots of them that we disagree on, but that this is a topic that he and I agree with. I was really excited when public comment was moved from the end of the meeting to the beginning of the meeting, and I think that I would love to see as much transparency as we can and to hear from people, because I truly think that we cannot do a really good job of representing the citizens if we're not doing a good job of listening to what it is that they have to say. And so beginning on the agenda topic and at the end is the way in which that I would love to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan?
We, in fact, did move it back to the beginning. We moved it to the end of the meeting at the request of many people in our community. And it, worked at the time. But we all, I think the vote was unanimous to move it back to the beginning of the meeting. And we're having very, civic discussions now. We always, I think, are very respectful of people who come in and speak at open time. That's something that's very important to me. I used to be one of those people. I know what it feels like to stand in front of a group of strangers. And we have always, I think, respectfully stayed. We've had nights when we were there until 2 o'clock in the morning listening to public comment. And in my recollection, we have always done that politely. We give everybody 3 minutes. We listen, and as long as I'm there, I'm going to continue doing that.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader?
Yes, during the last 4 years, it was moved from the beginning to the end, then back to the beginning, and it's working very well to have it at the beginning. I do agree with the 3 minutes. I think it kind of makes it an even playing field. Everybody knows that they have 3 minutes, and as I've been recently chairing the meetings, we try to adhere really strongly to those 3 minutes, although sometimes people don't feel like they can get all of their comments in that 3 minutes, but it's amazing how much you can get in. Also, you can talk on any item. You can talk on the consent. You can even put in a request to speak to the closed session items that you can't hear, but you know that it's agendized. We're very open. I think transparency is the rule for us. We need to adhere to. And I also have, as I've chaired the meetings this last year, really encourage people to come and speak, and they'll know that they'll get all 3 minutes, and I don't ask them to say, well, if you also have the same comment, you don't have to offer your comment. No, everybody gets to be heard their full 3 minutes.
Thank you. James Crockett?
So first I'll answer the question, which is a resounding yes. Of course, we want to hear from citizens. I'd love to see more citizens coming down to the meetings. I want to talk to you about why it was moved to the back in the first place, and that was because there were certain people that would comment and they would not follow the appropriate rules and regulations, whatever, that is just basic respect, okay? So I'm going to go to bat for our city council here and saying they have taken some tongue lashings that they did not deserve. Now, they might have the worst policy decisions in the world, but you shouldn't get up there and give them personal insults. Personal insults mean you've lost the argument. If you have to attack their character to get your point across, I'm not okay with that. So the problem is not that we wanted to be hiding behind and put something at the end. The problem was there's people that need to be held to a standard when they comment. Just like any student in the classroom, I expect you to comment respectfully. If you can't, you're out of here. And I would like to see that enforced maybe a little more in city council, because it's a few bad apples that are making it so we feel like we had to move the comment back, and it's been moved up now, and that was a great decision, and I support that.
Thank you. John?
This question first goes to Aaron Resner. Aaron, how do you feel about privatizing some City of Reading services, and what services would be privatized?
It's my belief that sometimes we can make a wise decision financially to privatize different departments or services. I would love to explore a handful of different departments, but I think that we have to check what that balance is between does a private entity best represent the people, or are they most informed about that specific department? I think that before we have done that in terms of cleanup or in terms of small things that I don't necessarily think are as crucial to have that sort of same historical knowledge. And so I would explore departments in which that historical knowledge is not as crucial for us and that we can get the most bang for our buck.
Francie Sullivan, how do you feel about privatizing some City of Reading services? And what services do you feel can be privatized?
Well, I say this with regret, but we wouldn't have a library if we hadn't privatized it. And I was kind of shocked. I wasn't in an elected office, but we have a library service because we contract with a company called L&S. While I've been on the city council, I have supported privatizing the call center for our utilities. Those are horrible jobs. You can imagine, first of the month, people get their power bill. They're very abusive. It was very difficult and very expensive for us to run our own call center, so we privatized that. We privatized a great deal of our landscape maintenance districts, the people who take care of landscapes around subdivisions. We also did studies on privatizing IT, privatizing several other services, and not surprisingly, this is pretty common knowledge, most of those things cannot be done cheaper or better by the private sector. That's why we have government, to provide those services that can't be provided by businesses.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, how do you feel about privatizing some City of Reading services, and what services do you think can be privatized?
Well, just like Councilmember Sullivan just said, that we have privatized the library, and that's proven to be one outstanding decision, and that's benefited the community. And I'm in favor of, examining the financial pluses and minuses of privatizing things. I know they did do a study, and it wasn't shown to be cost-effective to privatize our parks maintenance. We also could look at joint operations and find financial benefits. For example, the landfill is a joint operation between the city and the county. The county owns the property, and the city operates it. So we can look at other variations besides privatizing. And the point is, we should always be looking at how we can provide the best services for our constituents for a fair price, and we can afford within our budget.
James Crockett, same question. How do you feel about privatizing some City of Reading services, and what services do you think can be privatized?
Well, generally speaking, I don't care if it's private or if it's public. I care if you're going to do the job the best. So I don't have a sacred cow, and I'm not here to say let's have bigger government. I'm not here to say let's have smaller government. I'm here to say if anyone brought me any offer for anything and they showed it could be done better, I'd be very, very interested. Whether it's park or electric or whatever, I think RU does a great job. If you look at the rates that other people are paying under PG&E, they're doing a great job. But I am absolutely pro-privatizing or pro making something public as long as it's going to give the best results to our citizens and move our city forward in the best possible direction.
Michael DeCusto, how do you feel about privatizing some City of Reading services, and what services do you think can be privatized?
So the question about privatizing is based upon the factor that you want to save money, is the principal reason that people say, I want to privatize because we can do it for less money. Some things you can, some things you can't. Some types of services are not appropriate to be privatized. For instance, police and fire are probably not appropriate to be privatized. I don't see you have private police departments or private firemen that can provide the same kinds of services. The question really is specific to a certain department or a certain job or a certain function of the city as to whether it should be privatized or not. Part of the difficulty that we have if we're elected to council is to decide how to allocate the limited funds that are available, and as part of that allocation, if someone came along and submitted a proposal and said, I propose to take over X as part of the city's job, and they made a proposal and said they wanted to do it, I would be open to look at it. But you'd have to look at all sides to consider it and see what it is before you could make any kind of an intelligent decision.
Susan, next question.
All right, Francie, you're on this hot seat here. Could you discuss your approach to the issue of unfunded pensions?
Absolutely. Again, please go to the City of Reading website, tap on the transparency portal, and it will tell you everything you want to know about our pensions, how much it costs, and how much unfunded liability we have. It's not a direct number about unfunded liability, but the shortcoming in our budget over the next, we do 10-year budgets, and over the next 10 years, at some point, we will have a $25 million shortfall in keeping our 5% reserve. We already, in the past year, have cut that down to $9 million because changes in formula. We have a long-term plan to keep our budget balanced and to pay off those pensions. In addition, every employee, since I've been on the council, pays a greater share of their pension. That happens through negotiation with the employees' unions, and we continue to do that.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, same question.
Yes. Well, we have addressed that in the last 4 years, and one of the ways we did it was in the last 2 years, we have paid our annual payment to PERS in one lump annual amount, and that saved us $500,000, between $400,000 and $500,000 a year in doing that. So that's how we are shrinking our budget shortfall. Was estimated to be $25 million at the end of 10 years, and now it's estimated to be $9 million, which is still not acceptable. So the other ways that we address unfunded liabilities and just our budget shortfalls is that when people are retired, the people who hired are hired at a less salary, and they're also hired with less benefit. They're cheaper benefits. And also, when we have we're downsizing some departments, we don't rehire anybody. So we're trying to find some economy of scale. So we have been addressing that in the last 4 years, especially the last 2 years.
Thank you. James Crockett, same question.
So I think the public employee unions have done pretty good negotiating, and that puts us in a little bit of a hard spot. I think, if you worked for a union, you'd want to get paid well, and we've done that, and that's great. And That does put us in a spot that isn't dissimilar from most other places. If you look at the upside-down population pyramid, I mean, this is a global problem. If you think we have it bad, go look at Spain, go look at Italy, go look at Japan specifically. I mean, it's an issue that a lot of places are dealing with right now. So while it does look doom and gloom, I can tell you it's not near as bad. It's not the end of the world. The solution short term is to make sure we're being very smart with raises, with what we negotiate for salary, who we hire. But the long term is, it would be really great for me if the best jobs in the city weren't city jobs, that we had a lot of business and economic growth here, and you enlarge the tax base, and then that problem would disappear. So I think that it's going to be a multifaceted solution, but I think that we'll be able to figure it out.
Thank you. Michael DeCristo?
Thank you. The question about the unfunded pensions, and nobody said they have a magic wand, and they don't. If they tell you that, they're not telling you the truth. It was a problem and an issue that's been created over a number of years, and it's going to take a number of years to resolve. There's a multitude of factors that will play on it, some of which the city has control over and some of which the city does not. For instance, if the stock market does well and CalPERS has a higher return on their investment than they project, in theory, they could lower the payments they're requiring from the city to make up the difference. So that's one thing that may happen. The other thing is that you need to be open with your books for the negotiations with the different unions and show them what you have. And it's really a math problem. It's not anything, nobody wants to, well, I don't want to take away anybody's pension that's been guaranteed and has been promised to them. The lawyer in me says you made a deal and you should do the best you can to keep that deal. But with new people that come in and you change the hiring formula, and the state has, some of that coupled with the current budget ought to help work towards solving the problem.
Thank you. And Aaron Resner?
For a while, pensions have sort of been that big elephant in the room that nobody really wants to address. And some of that is because there are those who believe that we can cut our way out of this problem. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case. One, we need to make wise financial decisions, and we need to keep that as a top priority. I need to stay at the forefront of our minds that every decision we're making, is this a wise financial move for us, and is this something that we should do? But I don't think that we can cut our way out of this problem. So I think that the other part of that is creating more revenue. And I think one of the ways in which that we do that is to change what it is that our economic culture looks like. At the moment, we sort of have a reputation, whether it's true or not, but we sort of have a reputation for not being very business friendly. And I think that we have the power to change that and to move in that direction, and that that'll help create more revenue to offset that problem. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Kristen, we're going to start with you. Kristen Schrader, Reading has a noticeable homeless population. What can a city do to address issues around the homeless?
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, I've worked on that issue for the last 4 years, and I am the only, I can say the only elected leader, the only community leader that actually took a look and tackled the $34 million problem that we have in our community, an annual problem. That's the cost of emergency room services to homeless, the jail. And what we found through doing countless community forums, listening to people from outside the community coming in and helping us do a strategic plan, that it's really simple. It's housing, but it's housing with supportive services. There are we think that there's about 3,000 people that are homeless in the county. And if you look at we think that are chronic homeless, it's about 300. And there have been programs that have been developed to address the chronic homeless. So we need housing, we need supportive services, and we need a will to help take care of this issue.
Thank you. James Crockett, Reading has a noticeable homeless population. What can a city do to address issues around homeless?
So as a government and econ teacher, I look at a lot of what other cities are doing to address the same issues we have. Some are much worse, some are better. I think there's a lot of great solutions out there. The question is, why aren't we doing some of these things? Why aren't we taking an aggressive stance towards this? I mean, I talked about jail space. If you don't have a punishment for bad behavior, I think that's the first thing, because homelessness is annoying. It's the crime that you guys are being affected with in your life, the people that are breaking into cars and whatnot. And a lot of homeless people are committing those acts, but not all all homeless people are criminals. So I think looking at solutions to punish the ones that are behaving poorly and support the ones that are interested in bettering their lives, and not taking a let's just go purge them all kind of mentality, but taking a situational basis, looking at what's the best solution for the individual, and making sure that we have multiple avenues to address the individual that has a situation, not just saying they're criminals or let's do this or that, but let's look at them each individually.
Thank you. Michael DeKisto, Reading has a noticeable homeless population. What can a city do to address issues around the homeless?
So I'm going to direct one of my pet peeves, and it's the use of the word homeless, because everybody has a different vision in their mind, his or her mind, as to what the word homeless means. Does it mean you missed a rent payment? Or does it mean you're out on the street with no job? Or does it mean you're sitting in South City Park shooting up all day long? It means, I don't know the person who asked the question what they mean by the definition of homeless. I met with Donnell Ewert, who's the Director of Health and Human Services for Shasta County, and I asked him, can you just show me a flow chart to show how many departments you have? And he showed me a piece of paper with probably 50 different departments. It was very complicated. I said, what's your budget for Health and Human Services? He said, $225 million a year. I said, do you have a capacity problem with all the different programs you offer? He said, no. What does that tell you? The Mission has 500 beds every night. They fill 200. What does it tell you? It's not a lack of programs available for the homeless. I don't think the homeless population is that high, meaning that we need more programs. I'll explain more later.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, Reading has a noticeable homeless population. What can a city do to address issues around the homeless?
Thanks for hitting on one of my pet peeves also. I think that there's a difference between a homeless situation and a transient situation. And in order to hash that out, we need to have key stakeholders around the table that can have conversations about that and about how it is that we address those issues. I'm excited about the low barrier shelter that HHSA is working on, and I think that we need to continue to collaborate and to push forward on projects like that. I think that there's also the aspect of jail space and mental health. And I think that if we continue to go at it in all of these areas, then I think that we have the possibility of finding some really healthy solutions.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, Reading has a noticeable homeless population. What can a city do to address issues around the homeless?
Last year, the city of San Francisco spent over $400 million on homeless transient street people. A few weeks ago, no less than Gavin Newsom, who started some of these spending programs, I believe, said to elected officials there, if you spend another $400 million, the problem will get worse. And he said, and I agree with him, this is a regional, a state, and a federal problem. And until larger and more wealthy and higher levels of government get involved in opioid addiction, in drug and all kinds of substance abuse programs and mental health programs, that portion of the people who live on our streets and cause problems and commit crimes are a staggering problem. And I don't believe we can solve that on a local level, although we have to keep trying. I believe people who are really down on their luck and lose their homes in our community have many services to help them out.
Thank you. Susan?
James Crockett. Recently, Bethel Church donated funds to the city of Reading for a specific purpose. What are your thoughts on that type of donation? Coming from a private, the public to the organization. Oh, recently Bethel Church donated funds to the city of Reading for a specific purpose. And could you tell us what your thoughts are on that type of donation?
So back in 2010, when I started attending a church called Bethel, I had no idea it was so controversial. But since getting involved in politics, I found out that it is quite the fad to talk about Bethel as this great conspiracy and that there's craziness going on. My take on it is this. This is a large organization in our city. It has the spotlight on it constantly because it is one of the largest and most successful groups around. And they're wanting to offer help to the community. Personally, since I attend, I'd probably recuse myself from a vote if it was specifically Bethel. But if there's any organization in town that wants to help out, as long as there's no strings attached, and despite what you might read on the conspiracy theory websites, there was no strings attached, at least I'm not aware of it. I've been going to council meetings for years, haven't missed a one. I'm fine with accepting this. I think it's an example of the city coming together. There's other places that have donated money to help public safety too. I think anything we can do to work together as a community to address the issues should be looked at.
Thank you. Michael DeQuisto.
The question didn't specifically say. I assume that they're referring to the donation that went to the neighborhood police unit and the $500,000 and the 4 officers they came. Take Bethel out for a moment. Let's suppose Bill Gates was here and he said, I want to help the city, and he gave $500,000. Is there a reason not to take it if there's no strings attached? I don't think so. The fact that it's Bethel, and the underlying part of the question is probably, well, what about their development? And are they following the rules? And did they get some favors for the money they gave in return for their development? I don't know if they did or didn't. I haven't seen any evidence that they did. But the question in the abstract, if a private citizen or private entity wants to give money to the government to help the government, there shouldn't be a prohibition on it. It also reflects on the government and its ability to manage its own finances when it has to go to the people and say, hey, we need more money for some specific thing. The tax revenue we have isn't sufficient. You can take certain things away from that. But in the abstract, I don't find it to be a problem.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, same question.
I sit on the Community Services Advisory Commission for the city, so I'm well aware of all of the donations that Bethel gives in regards to their time and their good heart for this city. I get asked this question pretty often: what is my tie to Bethel, and how do I feel about this specific donation? And my answer is always the same, that it is not necessarily about who gave the donation or any of that, but why are we in a financial situation in which that we have to take in order to continue to offer necessary services to our community? Why are we in a financial situation in which we cannot provide those basic necessities without assistance from any sort of private entity?
Thank you. Francie Sullivan.
Just for the record, Bill Gates did give us computers for our library, for those of us who eat, sleep, and drink at the library. Bless his heart. I'm grateful that Bethel gave us that money, because I might have been laying off the 4 NPU officers had they not. So at the time that money was given to us, it was already, I think, in the works that they were planning a big campus out by Shasta College. And I know comments were made at that meeting saying, you will be held to a higher level of regard. I mean, no one is ever going to say to me about any donation I get, personal or on behalf of the city, that it was a quid pro quo. I'm grateful for their generosity, and I'd like to add, I'm an unwashed heathen. I mean, I'm sorry, that's probably not something I'd brag about, but I'm not affiliated with any church. But if it weren't for Bethel, we wouldn't have a flight to Los Angeles. Bethel is the largest user of our airport. So we need to be grateful for what people contribute to our city and be mindful that we don't do trades.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader.
Yes, I'm very grateful that they chose to donate to the city and the $500,000, but that also inspired others to donate as well. So at the last count I heard, I think they're up to $985,000 in total donations to support our NPU unit, which, you know, regrettably, we weren't able to do with our own resources. And that is a problem, and that's something that we have been working on to alleviate. Then we also took a donation from Redding Rancheria. So the community, both the county and the city, were recipients of a $250,000 donation from Redding Rancheria to provide a prosecutor for misdemeanor offenses which were not being prosecuted. They were just being left alone. So we can be the recipients, and we appreciate having donations. I wish we weren't in those positions, and we're doing what we can to plan ahead so that we're not subject to those kinds of needs where we need donations.
Thank you. John.
Michael DeKisto, this question will go first to you. Here in the city of Reading, we just recently experienced a massive wildfire, the Carr Fire. What steps can a city take to prevent the type of wildfire damage that we recently saw to Reading properties?
The city can probably learn from Ventura and Santa Rosa and what they've done. I'm not an expert on it, but I learned in school that fire needs three things. It needs air, it needs a spark, and it needs fuel. We can't really control the air because we all breathe it. It's always there. We can sort of control the spark, but we can control the fuel. And if you have less fuel, it makes sense to me that you would have less of a fire danger. Now, we had an extraordinary event. I don't know that that would have changed the outcome, but I think it would have helped. If you drive through the areas where the houses were burnt, a number of them were overlooking the green belt. People like the green belts, but they should be cleared more. I mean, if you live at the top of a green belt, you're living at the top of a chimney. The city should go and do that. I haven't seen the lawsuit, but apparently there's somebody who's upset with the city and wants some type of a CEQA review because they don't think that the city has undertaken work pursuant to a study they performed in 2015 with a damage assessment on the west side, and they haven't done much to clear it up. I don't know. It's certainly something to investigate, but I think fuel management is probably the most important thing.
Aaron Resner, what steps can a city take to prevent the type of wildfire damage we recently saw to Reading properties?
I don't think that most people saw the tragedy that happened. I don't think that most of us saw or anticipated that that was going to be an issue. But going forward, I think that that opens the door for conversations in regards to what is the proper management of our green belts and open spaces in regards to the city and to the city limits. I would love to start including developers and foresters in those conversations so that we can create a wise plan for what the future looks like in management of that area. Thank you.
Francie Sullivan, what steps can a city take to prevent the type of wildfire damage we recently saw to Reading properties?
Obviously, the city doesn't have the resources to do more maintenance of those green belts than we have now, and those green belts are a gift. I mean, we have lots of conversation right now about saving trees. 25% of our city is in a green belt. That's amazing. And I'd like to thank my colleague, Councilmember Winters, who suggested a few weeks ago that our staff look at the possibility of a citywide LMD, a landscape maintenance district. This is something we would consider, and you would all be asked how you feel about this. But every citizen in the city of Reading perhaps pay a small fee toward the maintenance of those green belts, because I certainly think they're a great attribute for a community, and I don't want to lose them.
Kristen Schrader, what steps can a city take to prevent the type of wildfire damage we saw to Reading properties recently?
Well, the Carr Fire, as a lot of people have heard explained by the firefighters, is something that many firefighters, even fighting for 30 years, had never seen before. But aside from that, the city has put in place, when we approve development plans for subdivisions, we do make requirements on the developer to mitigate the fuel management. They are required to do that already. One of the things we probably need to look at is how can we better enforce that, because in some cases the property is not the public property, but it's private property for which maybe they haven't done the fuel management that they need to. The second thing is we are undertaking a study, and thank you to Councilmember Winter getting the idea before staff to bring back to us the fuel management plan that we're looking at, a strategy that other communities have adopted and looked at. For example, in the Oakland Hills, after they had a fire there, they looked at how can we prevent that going forward. We also need to make sure that our homes are built to the standards.
Thank you. James Crockett, what steps can a city take to prevent the type of wildfire damage we recently saw to Reading properties?
First, I want to say anyone that experienced loss from the Carr Fire, my heart goes out to you. It's tough. It's tough to experience that, and I want you to know that the community is going to support you and that your council member is going to support you, whether it's me or anyone else. I know that we're going to get your back. We're going to get you up and running. Looking forward to the future, why don't we get a work program, get some of the homeless people at the Mission, get them out there working, clearing brush. If they do a good job, maybe we could set up some housing for them. I mean, figure out a way to get the community involved and cleaning this up going forward. You know, it's something you can't predict, you can't see it, but there's studies that show that we could have, you know, there's areas that were bad and, you know, we could have done more, and whether we get a couple lawsuits or a pile-on, we're gonna be hearing about this for quite a while. But I definitely think that the answer moving forward is if we don't have the money for it, let's get the community involved and get them out there and find a solution to make sure this never happens again.
Thank you. Susan.
This is a common question that I hear around town, and so I'm interested that it came up tonight. What are some of the areas that the city can address to improve opportunities for local youth? Skill development, college going, unemployment, those different areas. So Erin, I think, are you the... Yes. What are some of the areas that the city can address to improve opportunities for local youth? For example, skill development, college going, employment.
As some of you may know, we have high ACEs scores here. Those are adverse childhood experiences here. We have some really sad statistics in regards to youth and in regards to the experiences that they have in their homes, foster youth, those sort of things. I would love if we could see a partnership more between high schools and between various different mentor programs like Catalyst and amongst the city. I would love if we could start operating some internships at the city level. I think that anytime that we can engage some of those young people and get that interested in various different career paths that we offer here, and we can plug them in, that gives them a greater opportunity to be like myself and to love this community and want to come back and do something that they were passionate about, but to do it for their city.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, same question.
Well, obviously, the city doesn't have control over education programs or, I mean, in some states they do, and maybe in some cities they do, but in Reading we do not have a direct financial relationship with the schools, and we don't run job programs. Those are things maybe the county does. However, our recreation department is amazing. We have the largest Little League program in the state of California, Junior Giants, I should clarify. We have a lot of recreation programs for students. We have an Explorer program in our police department that allows high school students and college students to actually experience as close as they can what it's like to be a police officer. We have an ROP program that actually meets in a fire station. We do, you know, I think individual departments also have students on visitors and things so that they can see up close job possibilities. Our electric department actually offers scholarships for linemen. So,
Thank you. Kristen Schrader.
That's a great question. In fact, that was the focus of the State of the City address yesterday, and I'm proud to say that I have a lot of experience in working with youth, 20-some years experience, and I'm at the table at many of those organizations that are looking at ways to improve our opportunities for youth. One of the groups we talked about yesterday was United Way has a program that they're developing to help youth. We have Reach Higher Shasta, which is developing internships and helping to transition students through high school to higher education so that they can get more job preparations. Girls Inc. is a great program for girls, usually middle school to high school. And Catalyst, we talked about, is a great way to provide mentoring to youth who need, they need a significant adult in their lives to help them with dealing with adverse situations. We do have high ACEs scores, and that's what I've been concerned about for the last several years. MLK Center is another example.
Thank you. James Crockett?
So for those of you that don't know, I'm an instructor out at Shasta College, and I'm in the trenches on this one. I work with an at-risk demographic, a couple different programs out there, and I am every day grinding it out with these students, helping them realign their lives, redirect their lives. Fact of the matter is, a lot of the jobs here in Reading, they require degrees that we don't offer at Shasta College, and a lot of the degrees we offer, people have to move to find work. I'm on the academic senate out there. I'm on the faculty association out there. I'm in key leadership positions, and I will be, whether I'm elected or not, be fighting this battle for the foreseeable future. An intermingling there that's really going to bring a momentum and a power for our future generations.
Thank you. Michael DeCusto.
So this is an important question. What the city can actually do is somewhat limited. Most of the benefit in the programs for private youth come from private organizations, one-on-one mentoring. There's a program called CASA, which is Court-Appointed Special Advocate, that's run by Northern Valley Catholic Social Services, and I put a shout out to my wife, who's a CASA. You're appointed by a judge, and you're assigned, you can pick basically a foster child to help guide through the process and to be there and to represent the child in court. As part of the Rotary activities that I've done, we award scholarships to high school students. There should be more vocational training. The Builders School is a good idea. There are the building trades unions had a program at Shasta College, which should be brought back, which provides an opportunity for people to learn labor, to learn different skills, electrical, pipe fitting, that kind of thing, and get jobs after that. So it's those kind of things that we need to encourage as a group to help give an opportunity so the youth don't feel so downtrodden and they have something to look forward to.
Thank you. John?
Francie, this question goes first to you. What can the city of Reading do to encourage new business in the city?
Well, in fact, I am very proud of our Economic Development Corporation. We are one of the many public and private agencies that fund the Economic Development Corporation, and they are doing everything from encouraging startup businesses, which I think has much to do with our future. Todd Franklin, the Resners, many of these people are young people that are starting businesses here. I think, I just lost my train of thought, but I think that they are doing a great job of attracting businesses to come. And I think the kinds of things that we can do is we have fast-tracked our planning departments so that they respond more quickly. I actually have called people who are developers here that I heard were critical and had nothing but compliments about how they could call our building and planning department and actually have real people answer the phone. So I think we keep trying everything we can.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, what can the city do to encourage new business?
Well, I think we do need to continue to support the Economic Development Corporation. I think they've done great work. They've also helped launch some businesses. I think the Venture Hub was a great idea. The expanding our airplanes, our air service to increase, expand down to LA was a good idea. Was really helpful in promoting more business travel and also tourism. So I think that we have recently in the last year and a half or so, we updated our incentives that we offer businesses. Recently, I think it was Fall River Brewing that was awarded an incentive to expand their business here. So I think we need to continue looking at ways that we can improve our incentives and make sure that people widely understand what those incentives are.
Thank you. James Crockett, what can the city do to encourage new business?
Right now, we're in a very, very key time. The economy is doing well. We just got, car fire, as horrible as it was, we got tens of millions of dollars of free publicity. People know who we are. We have a bunch of builders coming here. The economic upturn right now, probably about 2 years, is going to start heading down. We are in a very, very pivotal spot, and we need to make some serious decisions right now to bring people in and capitalize on the opportunities we have. For me, what I want to see personally, I would like to see us take advantage of this I-5 corridor that goes through here, put a big sign up that says, "Welcome to Reading, entrepreneurs welcome, the best place to build in California," and make it true. Fix whatever's in the building code, whatever we can do to make it so people, when they hear the name Reading, California, they think, I want to go build there, I want to start something there, and the people that are living here, they're going to benefit from that new energy coming in, and we already have a great synergy going on right now. We need to support that. It's a spark. It's turning into a fire. There's a great group of people here that are really investing in the future of our city, and we need to fan that flame as hard and as fast as we can.
Thank you. Michael DeKista, what can the city do to encourage new business?
Get out of the way. That's kind of joking. The Economic Development Corporation is funded by the city, by the county, and by private businesses. And they have done an outstanding job. And they are one of the entities that I think the funding should be increased. 5 or 6 years ago, Mark LaSalle saw in the future and thought that encouraging a startup community would be the way to go. And he didn't know anything about it. We didn't have anything here. So he started an angel investor group, which is sort of like Shark Tank, but we're not as mean and we're not on TV. And I was one of the founding members, and there are about 12 to 15 of us that do that. And we have invested in probably 12 to 15 companies that are related to the Reading area in some fashion. They're not all totally Reading. 2 have gone under, but the other 10 are still in business, and they are growing. That's where you're going to get the money from. You'll have a bigger tax base. The city will get more revenue. That's what needs to be encouraged. So I would increase the funding for the EDC.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, what can the city do to encourage new business?
I would love to see us start holding forums, whether that was twice a year, 3 times a year, where there was a partnership between the Economic Development Corporation, the Planning Department, and Venture Hub, key stakeholders in that entrepreneur space. I think that we should host forums in which that it's almost a how to open a business for dummies. Because if you go into the building department with your idea, often you don't know what codes and what the zoning should be and all of those sort of things. And our staff is doing a really good job of saying this is the code and this is not the code and that's not going to work. But I think that we can shift that culture to be a yes, how can we help you? And if we shift that culture to a how do we make your dreams come true, that we have a lot of opportunity to be an amazing place for entrepreneurs and business owners.
Thank you. Susan?
I think that I am at Kristen. So, Stillwater Park. What should the city do with Stillwater Park?
Well, recently we received an offer for purchasing the balance of Stillwater Park, less the lot that was already sold to Lassen Canyon. And right now that's on hold, as we were told by the company, because they have more projects that have possibly a greater chance of success more quickly than Stillwater. So Stillwater is a challenge. I think that that project still could go forward. We haven't heard anything different, as far as I know, even from Tony at EDC, that that's still a plan going forward. We told our city manager, the city council shared with our city manager last year during our priority setting sessions, that we wanted to have a conversation and some definite decisions made by, in my recollection, by 2019. So I think we recently had it was studied by the grand jury. We differed on how much we invested in it. We think it's $23 million. And when we sell it, it'll be for fair market value.
Thank you. James Crockett, same question.
Stillwater Park is it's a little bit of a puzzle, and we don't want to lose money on it, and I understand that, but I think that anything that comes across the table that is going to bring something to us, we should look at. I think there's other areas in town too. There's a lot of publicly owned land that we need to look at, and how can we better manage that land. If I had 5 cars and I couldn't pay the insurance on all of them, I'd sell one of them, right? So I don't want to take losses on things, and we want to be financially responsible, but we need to use the property we have to leverage and make it so people want to come here and build. And I think that we've got to figure out how to do that more aggressively and figure out ones that will align with a bigger vision for the entire community.
Thank you. Michael DeQuisto, same question.
What was the question again?
The question was, what should the city do with Stillwater Park?
Currently, I think they graze cows out there, and they could probably find a better use than that. There's a couple things that you could do with Stillwater Park. We talked about housing, or I don't know if we've talked about it yet, but there's a question of what kind of housing needs can the city provide for displaced residents, for builders that are going to come in as a result of the car fire. Here's an outside-the-box idea. Take Stillwater, put some road base down, hook up to the sewers that are there, put some electrical things in, and let people with what the city calls houses on wheels, which could be RVs, trailers, anything that can roll in and out, let them stay there on a month-to-month basis. So it's an opportunity we can provide. It takes an asset that the city is not currently using, and it makes it into something valuable. Ultimately, what should happen with it? It should be sold. The city should not be in the business of developing property. Will it be sold tomorrow or the next day? I don't know. I do know from what I've heard and seen that the EDC has done a very good job. There have been many interested parties, but they don't disclose it. Oftentimes the parties required non-disclosure agreements to be signed, so they're not at liberty to say who they are, but there has been activity.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, same question.
In regards to Stillwater Business Park, all options need to be on the table, and we need to do a very good job of seeing how we could make every single one of those options work. I also think that it would be a fabulous idea to create some sort of vision board, and as a city council member, to be going out and soliciting business. There are other cities and other states that have seen growth that we haven't seen, and it's because they have a city council who is being active, and they're going out and they're asking other businesses that we want to see here, and they're saying, what can we do to get you here? And then after that, they live out that question. They follow through, and they figure out a way to get somebody here. And so I think that I would love to pursue both of those avenues.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, same question.
I actually discussed this today with the Economic Development Corporation, and Panettone, I think that's public information, is still very much interested. They just have a much bigger deal than us to work on, but they're still calling, and they don't exactly need to have us for buddies. So I, way back in the day when this was discussed, was not a big supporter of the concept of building this park, but when I was elected to the council, it was a done deal. And so I think we have to make the best of it. And we also need to, I think there are many people that have forgotten, Stillwater was not invested in by the city as a real estate deal. It is intended to create jobs. As the mayor said, we have put a timeline on, being over that. In the meantime, we have given direction to the Economic Development Corporation. We've given them the authority to manage, to sell, and we have a number of businesses in town that they have brought here that located other locations.
Thanks. John?
This question will first go to James Crockett. We had a few cards that asked, quite a few cards that asked a question around that, so I've tried to distill this down. Regulation of cannabis businesses. Have we got too much, too little, or are we just right?
Me personally, way too much. I do not like the drug. I mean, this is my daily battle, okay? For years, I asked my kids, though, what's easier for you to get, alcohol or marijuana? Every single time, 100%, they say marijuana, easy. They say, I can call someone in 15 minutes and have it. Alcohol's harder. And that's been a Schedule 1, I mean, this was before they legalized it, okay? It's on our streets, it's here. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, and you can think it's not an issue, but I'm telling you it's an issue. It's still in the lives for my kids, and I work every semester to try to give them a different direction. This is what it says. As much as I hate dealing with it, when you legalize it and you regulate it, the people that it hurts the most stop using it. If you go look at the federal government's statistics and the research they've done in Colorado, there has been a significant downtick in marijuana amongst youth because it was regulated. So it's here. I think we regulate it, I think we tax it, and I think we keep it out of the hands of our youth.
Michael DeKista, regulation of the cannabis business here in Reading. Too much, too little, or just right?
So I appreciate the question. There is a tax on the ballot in November for the marijuana, and if it passes, and I don't know if it will or not, and I'm elected, I would use that money to provide more law enforcement services. I announced that in June when I announced my candidacy, and I mention it every time I get an opportunity to do that. It would be an additional revenue source for the city, and I would spend that money on one of two things. I would spend it on either more jail beds, or I would spend it on more community service officers. And I've heard people say tonight, and I agree, that the city is responsible for the police and the county is responsible for the jail. But that's part of the problem, that attitude that's gotten us where we are today. The problem we have with crime is not a city problem, It's not a county problem, it's a community problem, and it needs a community solution. As far as regulation in the cannabis business, it's here to stay. You may as well take advantage of it. I think the regulations so far that have been proposed appear to be reasonable. They should be flexible, and if in the future there's a problem, they should be able to be readily changed.
Aaron Resner, current regulation of cannabis businesses in the city of Reading. Too much, too little, or just right?
Get asked this question pretty often in regards to cannabis. Being that I grew up here, I think that we are naive to put our heads in the sand and to say that we do not live in what they call the Emerald Triangle and that that is not a situation that is happening here or that needs addressed. Yes, it is a state law in which that has passed, and I think that the wisest thing for us to do is to study, which is the majority of what I spend my time doing on this particular topic, which cities are doing it, which ones have done it well, which ones are not doing it well, and I think that we can find a balance between the regulation and that black market in which that we still have the same problems that we have always had.
Francie Sullivan, current regulation of cannabis businesses in the city of Reading. Too much, too little, or just right?
Well, obviously, on the night I voted to support them, I thought they were as good as we could get. Our city attorney spent a tremendous amount of time on this topic. He had 3 public hearings. Some of you may have been there. They were some of those contentious, outrageous meetings with people with strong opinions. But he spent a great deal of time researching, looking at what other cities are doing. This is something that was passed by the state. We are part of the state of California. And we also put in there provisions for bringing it back and reviewing it and seeing how it works. I agree with Mr. Crockett's comments that I feel very much that we are in much better shape to tax it, to legalize it, put some monitoring on it. I heard the same thing from every young person I ask. Easier, way easier to get marijuana than beer. Thank you.
Kristen Schrader, current regulation of cannabis businesses in Reading. Too much, too little, or just right?
Well, because it's illegal in the state of California, I supported the need to regulate it in our city with 60 square miles and 90,000 people. I think it's imperative that we regulate it, but we also establish taxing for business license to set up retail, commercial, any commercial venture. And those funds will be set aside to pay for an increased code enforcement, a CSO, and a fire prevention inspector. So I believe in that we have set up the means to enforce the regulations that we established. The tax that we put on the November ballot, if we've estimated, would be $750,000 annually, and I support that that money would be spent on increased law enforcement, public safety, could be sworn officers, it could be CSOs, and it could be increased jail. We need to make people accountable. So that would be it.
Thank you. Susan?
We'll start with you, Michael DeQuisto. Reading's TOT, or transient occupancy tax, is lower than many cities in California and across the nation. Would you favor raising this tax, as surveys show it does not affect travelers' decisions for nightly accommodation?
The transient occupancy tax makes up about 4 to 5%. I beg your pardon. It's a relatively small percent of the general fund, but it is an important aspect to it. I would have to look at the figures to see what it is in other cities and what the travel ratio is, how many people are coming and who's paying it, before I would be able to decide whether to raise it or not to raise it. My gut inclination is if you raise it a small amount, you're probably not going to affect the travel. I mean, if I go somewhere, I don't necessarily ask what the tax is going to be on the hotel room. Some cities, you know, it's going to be large, and some it's not. But I'd have to look at the figures more closely to actually decide whether it's appropriate to raise it or not.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, same question.
I think I would continue to explore whether or not that this was a wise idea. I don't think that I have a firm answer for you at this moment, other than I think that any time that we are exploring a tax, that we have to be cautious about taxing, and we need to be cautious about anything in regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan?
I would very much defer to the hotel businesses in our community. They already voluntarily charge an additional 2% to their customers, and they use that money to add to the promotion of our city. They also recently committed $145,000 toward additional law enforcement out of that money. But they chose, and they have continued to choose that, to charge their customers an additional 2% for the benefit of the community, as well as to promote their own hotel businesses. So I would not be inclined to impose on them. I think there are options I hope our community will look at, and if the hoteliers chose to pay, to charge, that would be a grand thing, but I wouldn't want to impose that on them.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, same question.
Actually, the number is $5.2 million we generate annually from the transient occupancy tax, which represents about 10% of our general fund budget. And that is a significant amount of money, and we spend about $1 million that we transfer to the Convention Visitors Bureau for promotion of tourism. I think we've seen good results. Our transient occupancy tax has increased 5% year over year for the last several years. We had a Visit California representative yesterday at the State of the City talk about increased contributions to help us with tourism, which is very important. I would be open to talking with the hotel owners to see what their thoughts were, if they were interested in raising it. It is, an important decision. We'd need to talk with our stakeholders before we went forward with that. But it is a good source for public safety, because they did transfer $145,000 per year for the next 4 years for law enforcement.
Thank you. James Crockett, same question.
I have talked to a few of the stakeholders, and no, I would not support a tax at this time. I want to be known as a place that has low taxes.
Thank you. John?
Aaron Resner, this question is going to go first to you. We were talking about TOT taxes. Let's talk about a sales tax increase in the city of Reading. Are there any circumstances where you would support a sales tax increase in the city of Reading? And what would that circumstance be?
I would absolutely support something along those lines. I've been pretty vocal that the way in which that I would support it would be a specific tax. We have a situation that is sort of a bummer, that there's a lack of trust between the public and between public officials. And I think that until there is a better communication and until there is some more trust built, that I don't think that we have the current capacity to pass a general tax. And so I would be really supportive if we could put together a plan in which that it said these are the specific ways in which that money was going to be spent, and these are the only ways in which that money is going to be spent. That way we can best serve what it was that was the people's intention for that money.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, same question. Are there any circumstances where you would support a sales tax increase in the city of Reading? And what would those circumstances be?
Well, as a citizen of Reading, and as someone who's retired and lives on a fixed income, I would vote every chance I got for an increase in the sales tax. We have the lowest sales tax in the state of California, and how is that working for us? Tell me the last time someone said, I'm moving my business to Reading because you have the lowest sales tax. I want to move my family to Reading because you have the lowest sales tax. 1 cent of sales tax equates to $24 million. That is the amount of our entire police budget. And I wouldn't make it specific. I think the community, we have gone out of our way. Look at the transparency portal. You can find out where every dime is spent. But imagine if we had enough money to fix the soccer field, if we had enough money maybe to build more kayak parks. What if we just worked on making this the best city in the state of California. It seems to me like a very good investment.
Thank
and
you.
40% of it is paid
Thank you,
for
Francie.
by people
Kristen Schrader?
visiting the city.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, are there any circumstances where you would support a sales tax increase in the city of Reading, and what would that circumstance be?
Well, I supported the two previous proposed sales tax, the one in 2014 that was a special tax, and the last one was in 2016, which was a general tax. And obviously, neither of them passed. And so the lessons we learned from those two experiences, I think, is that we need greater input from the community. Even though we had studies, the blueprint for public safety, and then we had an implementation plan, I think that it didn't incorporate enough input from the community, and we didn't define the plan well enough. We didn't communicate about what the money would be used well enough, and so people didn't support the tax. So obviously we need to have improved communication about what we would spend the tax on. And the county just recently went forward and then backwards in adopting a sales tax. Their proposal at the last minute would have generated about $14 million that they would have only spent on the sheriff's department and the jail, which I didn't support.
Thank you. James Crockett, are there any circumstances where you would support a sales tax increase in the city of Reading? And what would those circumstances be?
I don't really care about the tax. What I care about is that Reading, California be known as one of the most business-friendly areas in the state. That's what I want. That's it. If you can show me that raising a tax will accomplish that, because that's how you generate money. You're not going to fix all the problems by raising taxes. I mean, you want to put a 5-cent sales tax on so we can buy all the stuff we want to fix all the issues we have? It's not going to happen, right? Half cents, a cent, maybe that's going to help us move to where we want to go. But I want to be very clear with you. If we do a tax, it's not just a tax because we just need more money. It's a tax because we have a clear, defined objective to bring in more wealth, more benefits to make our citizens' lives better. And if we cannot convince the citizens that that's the case, then no tax plan is going to pass, even if it's a good one. So it has to be able to make it better, to be sold to the citizens, and it has to have a clear vision how it's going to make this city better.
Michael DeQuista, are there any circumstances where you would support a sales tax increase in the city of Reading? And what would those circumstances be?
My preference is that there's two ways the city raises money. One is you raise taxes, the tax rate, and you get more money. The second way is you increase the business, and you have more taxpayers who pay at the same rate. I'm a great proponent of the second measure, which is to increase the business, to increase the population, grow the tax-paying base, and increase your money that way. If you really want to pass the sales tax, you need more than just talking to other government agencies. You need the trust of the citizens, and I don't see that that exists. You need to regain the trust. Either the current officials do, or you need to have new people in there that you trust that will do what you say and will listen to what you want to do. Until you have that trust, it's a folly to try to pass a new tax or to try to do anything along those lines. It's just not going to happen.
Thank you. Susan.
Thank you. Aaron. I've got to decide which question to go with here. I think I'll go with this one. How can the city of Reading increase funding for the Reading Police Department? It's Francie. I'm getting corrected here. How can the city of Reading increase funding for the Reading Police Department?
Gee, we just answered that question, didn't we? Sales tax. There are no other methods for the city to raise revenue other than a sales tax, and we don't have the authority to do that. That's something our community needs to decide and choose. I certainly support Mr. DeQuisto's desire to increase the number of taxpayers in our community, but that isn't something we have specific control over. I think we're doing that. But as far as raising revenue, in California, local governments do not have authority to raise any revenue. And you, again, I'm sorry, beat a dead horse to death, but go to the City of Reading website, and you can see for yourself how we spend our money, what our budget is, and where the money goes.
Thank you. Kristen Schrader, same question. How can the city of Reading increase funding for the Reading Police Department?
Well, actually, right now, we have a decision to make how we're going to maintain the 4 NPU officers that we have now that cost $800,000 a year. After July 1 of 2019, we have to find the money in our current general fund to do that. So that's the first job that we have to do, and we've already began our budget setting process 6 months early. So beginning in October and November, we're going to have that conversation with our city manager and look at ways that we're going to trim other budgets, find money that's existing in our general fund to be able to pay for those 4 officers, which I think is critical. Finding money to pay for additional law enforcement, one of the ways we're going to do it is through the marijuana tax. Also, we're going to have a CSO officer paid for by the business license fees that are paid for cannabis businesses. So those are a couple of ways. Sales tax is generally the way that cities do it, but that needs to have the concurrence with the community.
Thank you. James Crockett, same question.
How many of you have had interactions with a police officer in the last year? Can I see your hands? How many have interacted with them? All right. So if you've interacted with a cop, I've gotten a ticket before. You know what I told the cop? I said, I thank you for your service to this community. I appreciate what you're doing. I have the utmost respect for you, and I know you're put in some very, very difficult situations, and I really, really appreciate you. Are you doing that to your police officers? Because it's tough to be a cop here. The catch and release thing, no one wants to give them a sales tax. It's hard. The emotional spot that many of our police officers are in is not great. We need more funding. We got to look at some programs to cut. I understand all that. But the thing they need more than anything right now is emotional capital. If we invest in them, we tell them they're doing a good job, and we make them feel like they want to go out there every day, that's going to do a lot of good. And yes, looking at other financial things, we need to do that. But right now, we as a community, we really need to support them. And I think that's the first step.
Thank you. Michael DeQuisto.
This is closely related to the previous question, and increasing the funding for RPD is probably one of the toughest decisions that the current council and the future council will have to make. If you look at the budget as a pot of money, and you say it's not increasing or you estimate what it is, the only way to increase funding to one department is to take it away from the other department, unless you have a way to make more money. And that's simple math. Those are the choices that need to be made. If the marijuana tax passes, you might have a little bit more money. The current council has some tough decisions to make as to what departments they may want to cut back. One proposal that I did not see that as a business owner you might want to make is to say to the department heads, can you cut 5% out of your budget and come up with a number that way and make it across the board, not police, not fire, but every other one, and see what you come up with. At least it's a number. I didn't see that. I saw some general, well, there's $1 million here and there's $500,000 there and there's this and that. Maybe it'll come in the next wave or the next discussion, but that's how a business would do, and it seems to make common sense. How can we share equally?
Thank you. Aaron Resner.
During the last question and during this question, we discussed the ways in which that government entities create revenue. But one of the things that nobody has mentioned yet is grant writing. There are capable individuals within each department and within our police department who we could do a better job of educating so that they could write grants. I know that recently RPD was unable to apply for a $275,000 grant at the state level because we didn't have the capacity or somebody who was capable of writing a grant for that amount. So if I was city council, I would make that a priority to make sure that every single department has somebody within that department who's knowledgeable about the needs, who can do a good job of writing grants for us.
Thank you. John?
Who's up? I've lost track. Kristen, you're up? Thanks. So here we are in the Cascade Theatre, beautiful restored Cascade Theatre, and we're in downtown Reading. And I think you all know that downtown Reading has been designated as a California Cultural District, one of 14 in the state of California. What can a city do to encourage arts and culture development?
Well, so we have been supportive of the cultural district, and I'm proud to say that I sit on the cultural district board or the committee, and I think they're doing a great job. Just give you an example of one event, which was they support the Fashion Alliance, and we just had a fashion show downtown, and I see some of the models that we had at the fashion shows. And the Fashion Alliance is actually a great model of how the city is supporting the cultural district, which is supporting the Fashion Alliance, and they're providing ideas for makerspace for people to have employment opportunities, be creative, and earn money. I think we have plenty of opportunities to create more culture, more art in downtown, and I'm very supportive of that because it does provide an economic driver for our community. We're very lucky to be one of the 14 that was established, and that was largely because of Deborah Lucero and her amazing work that she did to support it, plus all of the partners, which included the city, Viva, okay.
Thank you. James Crockett, do I need to give you the whole intro, or can I just get straight to the question? Thanks. What can a city do to encourage arts and culture development?
So culture is a day-to-day thing. You don't just develop a culture by doing something once a week or once a month. You want to do it daily, right? It becomes part of who you are. So I think we need to reach out to our local artists first and really get them involved in the process. That's our foundation. Reach out to Shasta College, the professors that are teaching, get talented students to bring stuff in there. And as we develop that, we will attract other people to us. Artists will come, like a fly to a light. But we have to establish that culture first. And as we establish it, I think we really look for people that want to be part of what we're doing, looking at the beautiful scenery we have around, trying to get art that actually flows into how we're building new buildings, whether it's murals, intelligent design in our buildings, but make the entire downtown aesthetically pleasing as possible to invite that creativity, that ingenuity, because people are looking for a place to go, and we can give it to them. But it's got to start here with our local artists, making sure that we want them involved and going out and contacting them and giving them a canvas to paint on.
Michael DeKisto, what can a city do to encourage arts and culture development?
I think what McConnell has done and what they are doing with the downtown development and the portion where they want to have where the police station used to be in some of their plans is a very important part of the arts and culture development. I think that depending what you call arts and culture, the food truck park behind the Lorenz Hotel. We went there last night and it was absolutely fantastic. There were people there, there were families there. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I hope that it continues. I hope you support it. If you're a foodie, there's different kinds of food trucks, way more than I ever knew that existed, and I hope things like that continue to go. That comes from private enterprise who put it together with a deal with the city. I hope they finish their deal soon and move forward on that, and that's the kind of thing we need to continue.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, what can a city do to encourage arts and culture development?
We can continue to partner with businesses. We can encourage the Parks Department to create programs with local businesses, whether that is creating spaces for live music or whether that is writing grants or reaching out to artists. Those are the things in which that tie that millennial generation, which is going to make up 70% of our working force. Those are the things that tie them and that bring them in, that they love about a city and that attract really great workers and great employees to our area.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, what can a city do to encourage arts and culture development?
I was the second director of the Shasta County Arts Council, and boy, am I proud of what they've grown into. Way back in the day, the city of Reading offered rent space in Old City Hall, which is a great use for that building. Makes a lot of people go there that might not go there otherwise. I'm glad the Shasta County Arts Council's got the contract for the public access station. Thank you, Michael Flanagan. And I think the city has a long tradition of just being supportive in small and big ways. Last week, they had an art opening for their quarterly art show at City Hall. For all of you that have been in City Hall, you can walk up and down the hallways there every day and see local artists work. We have school children at the library at City Hall all the time looking at that art. They worked very hard on the permits for Riverfront Playhouse. I think the city, like I said, we don't have the money to have a big cultural district at the city, but we help every way we can.
Thank you. Susan?
This will be your last question. James, you get to start, and then we'll go to the closing. So, Michael, just to put you on notice, you'll be the person that closes first. Who is your hero and why?
My hero is my wife.
Okay, I should have said hero or heroine. Yes, thank you.
I love you, babe. Oh, why? Why?
Why?
I mean, just look at her. No, she married me, and I'm not the easiest person to live with sometimes, right? No, she just inspires me every day because she's flexible. She doesn't get stuck in a routine. She always has a vision. She always has a dream. She always has something she's shooting for. And she's an inspiration. She changes my life. And I mean, this is why I'm here, because she changed my life, and I want to change the city of Reading the way she's changed me.
Thank you. Michael DeCusto?
So he took my answer. His wife is not my hero. And it actually relates to a question I thought you might ask, which is a decision that you're sorry that you made and you wish you could do over. And I thought about that, and I wish I'd gotten married 5 years earlier to the same lady that I've loved and lived with for 32 years. She's the hero in my life. She helps me every day with problems that I have. Sometimes it's good help, sometimes it's not so good. But for the most part, it's good. But I love her dearly, and she's the light of my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
I'm really sorry, babe, but I'm not going to say you. He's awful hands. He's awful. Exactly, Francie's going to choose you. He's awful handsome. But my grandmother, man, I'm going to try really hard not to get any sort of emotional through this. My grandmother is my hero. She went to college during a time frame when most women didn't go to college. She ran a business when her sick husband was dying and sent kids to school. She worked as a nurse. She served her citizens and her county. She has helped support, she's helped support 12 grandkids through college. She's encouraged us and she's held us to a standard that is real high. And for that, I'm thankful to have been led by strong women who have said that I can accomplish anything.
Thank you. Francie?
I didn't have a grandmother, so I think crying over a grandmother is a good thing, and I'm sorry, Chris, but well, now I'm going to cry too, because this summer, I have a lot of heroes and a lot of heroines, but this summer, it has to be Fire Chief Jerry Gray, because I think about him every day and try to be a better person. Obviously, it doesn't work out every day, but he was just one of the most decent, kind, thoughtful, positive people I ever met. And he saw the good in everyone, and if he thought a mean thought or a critical thought about anybody, I never heard him express it. He looked for the good in everybody. And if I could be more like him, I'd be glad. I'm going to keep trying. Good luck, Chris. Maybe Kristen.
Thank you, Francie. Kristen?
Wow, I had the most time to think about that answer, I think, and it was hard. I went back and forth and back and forth. Family member, not family member. I have a couple of family members, I'm going to say, because I think that's where my heart is. My aunt, who lost her home in the fire, has always been my role model, and many people in this community know that, since this is kind of an emotional thing, because she was active she was on the Reading School Board, and she went back to school when she was in her 50s. She taught at business classes, legal secretary and medical transcriptionist until she was 70 years old. We held a birthday and a retirement party on the same day. So I really looked up to her, and I wish her the best, and I do say that's my hero, and she inspired me a lot, and I rely on her a lot.
Thank you. John?
Well, that concludes our questions. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank your friends and family for coming. And whatever the outcome, I want to thank all 5 of you, as well as your friends and family, for all the great service that you do to our community. Thank you very much. Audience, you may now give your favorite candidates a hand. We got a couple of important dates coming up. Voter registration must be completed by October 22nd. You can vote by mail. Those requests must be submitted by October 30th, and the election will be held on November 6th. I got that right, didn't I? So, thank you, Kristen Schrader, James Crockett, Michael DeKisto, Aaron Resner, and Francie Sullivan. Don't forget to vote. Did I not give closing remarks? Please do. That was terrible of me. Now it's time for a closing remark. Michael DeKisto, you're first.
I can hardly follow that, but I guess I will. I do want to thank everybody for having us here. I want to thank all the candidates, and I want to thank all of you for sitting here quietly and patiently and following the rules and listening to us babble. I hope it's been informative. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to talk. I do have a website, which is michaeldequisto.com. It's a lot of words, and you can probably closely spell it. I usually get it right. I have a Facebook page, which is Michael DeQuisto for Reading City Council. So the question you have to decide, and I think it's a pretty straightforward question, is which candidate or candidates do you want to vote for? I know who I'm going to vote for. I think I know who my wife is going to vote for, but I'm not sure. I don't know who anybody else is going to vote for. So how do you decide who to vote for, and what do you go and do? I think it comes back to what I said at the beginning. The three most important issues are crime, crime, crime. And other campaigns have said it for many years ago. Do you think you're better off 4 years ago? Do you think you're better off 8 years ago? Do you think you're better off 16 years ago? And all the government service the various people have provided during those times. I think the answer is no. Do you have increased trust in the government, or do you have decreased trust in the government? Has that gone up or has that gone down in the last 4 years or the last 8 years? And is that a fair way to look at it in your mind? Do you think the trust should go up, or do you think the trust should go down? I have my view. I think that the citizens don't have trust in the government. I think they've lost that. It takes years to gain trust with someone. You can lose it in a heartbeat with one thing that you do. And this council, I think, has lost the trust. I think the Board of Supervisors have lost the trust. How do you get it back is the $64 question. If you think the people that are on there will give it back to you, then you should vote for them. If you think new people need to be on this council and you want to take a chance and you want to trust new blood and new people, then you should vote for that. I know who I'm going to vote for, and I hope you vote for the same person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aaron Resner, closing remark.
Over the course of the evening, you have gotten a little bit of a tidbit into my background and into my resume. You know that I am a business owner and that I volunteer in a handful of nonprofits. But what you may not know about me is that I'm a fighter and I have a strong will to win. And that doesn't necessarily mean in the campaign ring. I have a strong will to win for our city. And at this moment, I'm a firm believer that our city needs some wins. We need some wins in regards to public safety, what it is that those serving us need and what their resources are, in regards to what it looks like for safe parks and trails so that our families can feel fine running and having a great mom night out, walking along the trails. But we also need wins in regards to economic development. Because what I'm doing is looking at what economic development looks like for the generations. And I want you to think about that also. What does it look like right now? Are your kids or grandkids that are leaving for college, are they desiring to come back here? Because I think that we need to be doing a better job. But I personally believe that if we get all of the people around the table, and that's something that I'm really good at, getting the people who don't necessarily always agree with each other around the table to throw out all of the great ideas and to come up with something so that somehow we can build a better Reading for ourselves and for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Francie Sullivan, closing remark.
Well, I certainly agree with my previous two, colleagues. I think, we can never stop trying to be better than we are now. Over the past 8 years, we've renegotiated contracts with employees, we've cut employees, we've furloughed employees, we've privatized services, and we've done all that at public meetings that are streamed. As I always say, you can sit home in your bunny slippers and sip wine and watch every single action the City Council does. And to add to that now, we have a web page that even I can navigate, and nobody's bragging about my technical skills. Our city manager said something that I think is very catchy. He said we need to align our community's expectations with our resources to provide those services. And we need to either lower our cynicism or lower our expectations. I'm going to continue doing everything I can to build trust in our community, but I need all of you to do that too. You need to start telling your neighbors when they complain, have you looked at the facts? Have you checked the facts? Have you looked at the city website? The laws that control us and our financial decisions are very strict. They require transparency. Our audits get gold stars. The numbers are there. The facts are clear. We just need our community to step up to the plate. All of us need to work together. We do a lot of collaboration now. We can do it better. The city works with the county. We run the landfill together. We run the library together. We run a lot of resources together, and we need to keep doing that. I'd appreciate your consideration on November 6th.
Thank you, Francie. Kristen Schrader, closing remark?
Thank you all for coming and for taking your time to listen and learn more about the candidates. When I decided to run in 2014, I started attending meetings in January of 2012. And I can tell you that from 2012 to 2014, we had I think, some of the most contentious times at the City Council. And since 2014 going forward, I think we've made a lot of progress. And what I'd like to propose is that we have set our bar higher than it was before, and we've made progress. We sat down with our new city manager, and he developed 5 goals and objectives, and we have adhered to them. He has given us an annual update since then, and they're economic development, public safety, budget and retirement, communication and public relations, and restructuring our government for the 21st century. We've brought the transparency portal. We have shrunk our budget shortfall from 25 million down to 9 million. We're on the right path. I think you need leadership now when it matters. It was tested the most during the car fire. Our water was continued to run when our treatment plant was threatened the most. Our electricity, we only lost it during rolling blackouts because we had a 19-point checklist that we did everything but one thing to keep our power on the whole time using those rolling blackouts. Our government was tested the most during this time, and I think what you've seen is that we have great people in place. We have tried to right-size our budget and right-size our employees, and we do think that going forward we'll have more decisions that we can make to address our budget shortfalls. So I think it's time that you trust leadership that's been in place to make that happen, and that you don't want to necessarily take a chance on people who say, we just don't trust who's there. Look at our record, look at my record. I was the only person in the community that personally took on the issue of homelessness. I presented plans to the City Council and the Board of Supervisors in August of 2016, and to this day, every proposal that I presented has been implemented. In 2018, all 3 of the proposals that I presented to the Council and to the Board of Supervisors have been implemented. I took the time, I convened many community workshops to gather the information that we needed just to address homelessness. We need to do more. We need to do more on public safety, more on economic development, but we've shown great strides in that and working with our partners on all of that. So I appreciate your vote in November.
Thank you. James Crockett, you're our last speaker tonight.
Babe, you gonna vote for me? She said yes, so at least that's one. Thanks for believing in me. If you want to find out more about me, there's a table back there. I've got some business cards. You can also go to Crockett for Council. I got a Facebook page. I've got some various videos, and I'll be adding some more videos here shortly. I want to talk a little about vision and what I do as a professional. We talked about Bill Gates earlier. He gave a grant to Shasta College to start the Gateway to College program there. Works with at-risk kids. They've been kicked out of school because of behavior problems. And people ask me, what's the difference between the kids you teach and the kids in the normal school? The difference is the level of support they have at home. I have half a dozen kids that are homeless right now. They don't know where they're going to sleep half the time. Serious obstacles to overcome. And I can tell you, throwing money at the issue does not make it go away, because there's something inside of them that they lack. They need someone to believe in them. And I'll tell you about what happened today. We had interviews. We had a bunch of people come out to the college and interview these kids, and I work with them. And I get a great resume and cover letter for them. They put it together. I kind of show them how. But the number one thing I do is I teach them how to believe in themselves. And every single year we do this. I have professionals that have done HR interviews, tons of people, right? All sorts of walks of life come in, and they say these kids are outstanding. They're amazing. Can't believe what you're doing with them. If we want things to change and get better, we need to start believing in ourselves. We need to start believing in our neighbors. I believe in my kids, and I tell them for the rest of your life, you will never be able to say you never had someone believe in you. And every semester, I see lives changed. For the city of Reading, I have a specific vision. A vision where all the issues we're talking about tonight, none of those are going to be the issues we talk about 10 years from now. We're going to be talking about different things, exciting things. I haven't talked about a bunch of details. I'm not super into the details. I'm into the vision. And when the details come before me, I'll make a judgment at that time. So you're not going to pin me down, do this or do that. My vision is one for Reading, is one for my family to thrive. Just like I see these at-risk kids come in, first-generation college kids, don't know where they're going to stay. And then when they graduate, they have a vision for their future, and they believe in themselves. That's what I want for our community. And, I can tell you right now, you can elect me or not, I'm going to keep fighting for it. Call me Mr. Inevitable. I'm going to stick around. I'm not going anywhere, because this is too important. The question is whether you want to go on that ride with me, or how much you want to support me in my mission. Hopefully I can lay out a vision that's strong enough, that's clear enough, that you will support me. If not, then I'm still going to try. I'm going to keep going. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank our 5 great candidates. It is not easy to be a candidate. So thank you all for running. Thanks to the Cascade. They gave this to us at no cost tonight. I really appreciate that, because they're a money-making organization too. And thank you, John Truitt.
Thank you.